On the day of my wedding, my sister stepped down the aisle, dressed in a wedding gown, and declared, "He picked me instead." My mother clapped her hands and smiled, saying, "We knew you'd understand." My fiancé, Michael, chuckled and said, "You have no idea what's coming next." Then he took out his phone and hit play. I was supposed to be living my dream day. The venue was stunning, a historic mansion on the outskirts of Chicago, complete with ivy-clad walls and exquisite stained glass windows. My dress was a delicate lace creation that had been passed down through generations, perfectly altered to fit me. Everything was perfect. But looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs, the way my mom kept giving me those tight-lipped smiles, the kind that screamed, "Just go along with it." But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what came next. The music began, and the bridesmaids, dressed in flowing pastel gowns, made their way down the aisle. My heart raced. I was minutes away from marrying the man I loved. And then, just as the processional ended and everyone turned to look at me, something shifted. The music suddenly stopped. And there she was, my sister, Valerie, walking down the aisle in a wedding dress. At first, I thought I was seeing things, but no, there she was, holding a bouquet and wearing a smug grin. The room went silent, and the whispers began. I stood frozen, gripping my bouquet so tightly my fingers were numb. Then, she spoke. "He chose me instead." My mind couldn't process it. My sister, my own flesh and blood, was standing at the end of the aisle, declaring that she had taken my place. The gasps from the crowd echoed through the room. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." And then, my mother, my own mother, started clapping. "We knew you'd understand," she beamed, as though this was some kind of twisted family celebration. I was trembling. My father, his face buried in his hands, looked ashamed but remained silent. And then Michael, my groom, laughed, not nervously or confusedly, but with deep satisfaction, as if he had orchestrated the greatest prank of all. "You have no idea what's about to happen," he smirked. And then, without hesitation, he pulled out his phone, pressed play, and everything changed. The room fell eerily silent, even the birds outside seemed to freeze. Michael raised his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. He glanced at Valerie, then at my mother, and finally at me. His smile never faltered. "Let's show everyone the truth," he said. And then he pressed play. A video appeared on the screen, grainy at first, showing someone entering a hotel room. The camera angle shifted, giving a clearer view. It was Valerie, walking into the room with a smile on her face. And there, waiting for her, was a man, not Michael. My mother's face went ashen. Valerie's arrogant grin turned into something far darker. The video continued, and there was no mistaking what was happening. Valerie wrapped her arms around the man's neck, and they kissed. She didn't hesitate. Then her voice echoed from the phone. "He's an idiot," Valerie sneered. "He thinks I love him. I'm just passing the time until someone better comes along." The room erupted into chaos. Gasps, murmurs, exclamations. Someone in the back shouted, "Holy shit!" My hands, still clutching the bouquet, were shaking, but now it was with rage. My sister had tried to humiliate me in front of everyone, and Michael had turned the tables. Valerie whipped around to Michael, her face contorted with disbelief. You set me up." He lowered his phone. "I didn't need to," he replied coolly. "You did all this yourself." My mother, finally regaining her voice, stammered, This isn't what you think. Valerie is the one for him. You would have understood in time." I felt my stomach turn. But Michael wasn't finished. "Oh, I understand just fine," he said. "Let me explain the best part." Valerie recoiled, her hands trembling. "Michael, no. He cut her off. "Let's talk about how your mother helped make this happen. How she pushed Valerie to take me away. How she convinced her that she was the one for me, because she always thought I was too good for her other daughter." My mother stumbled back, visibly shaken. And then Michael pulled out another phone, because, of course, he had a backup. "You might recognize this voice," he said, pressing play. It was my mother's voice. "She's not smart enough for him, Val," my mother said. "She's nice, sure, but you're the better choice. You're meant to be with someone like Michael. She'll get over it." My knees nearly buckled beneath me. A cold, biting laugh rippled through the crowd. It was from someone, maybe an aunt or distant cousin, but it spread quickly. The murmurs began, and with them came the weight of judgment. Valerie stood there, her dress now a mockery of the day, her chest heaving with fury. You knew, she spat at Michael, this whole time, you knew what was going on and played along. Michael stepped forward, his gaze steady. I wanted everyone to see exactly what you are. Valerie clenched her fists. You said this would work, you promised she'd accept it. My mother looked as though she might faint. Do you still think I'll just get over this? I asked, my voice steady but icy. She opened her mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. And then, the whispering in the crowd morphed into something darker. Laughter. Not the warm kind, the kind that stings. People were shaking their heads, murmuring to one another, pointing. I didn't catch who started clapping first, but the sound spread, slow, sarcastic, and biting. It wasn't applause, it was ridicule, and when it hit my mother's ears, she physically recoiled. Valerie's face flushed crimson. Shut up, she shrieked. All of you, this was my day, my moment, you don't understand. Michael cut her off with a bitter laugh. Your moment? Valerie, this was my wedding, you stomped all over it, you embarrassed yourself, you tried to destroy me, and now, you're nothing but a punchline. Valerie stumbled back, her emotions flickering across her face like lightning. My mother reached for her, clutching her arm tightly. We need to leave, now, she hissed, her voice trembling. Valerie yanked free. No, her eyes darted around the room, frantic, desperate to find some way to reverse the damage. I can fix this, I can. Then she turned toward me, eyes wild. You don't deserve him. I said nothing, I didn't have to, the silence between us said everything, and that was when I saw it hit her, this wasn't hers to salvage anymore, it was over. Michael looked at me, concern finally cracking through his bravado. You alright? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't letting them hold power over me anymore, so I drew in a breath, stood tall, and answered. I have no idea what's about to happen next. The entire room exploded, laughter, whispers, gasps, chaos, but I didn't move, I stood firm. Valerie looked like she might combust. My mother trembled. And Michael? Michael still wore that smug smirk, like he was watching the last scene of a play he'd directed himself. But the thing about schemes? They don't always go according to plan. Because that's when he appeared. The back doors creaked open, and in walked a man in a sharp black suit, not a guest, not a part of the celebration. He walked with calm purpose, a phone in one hand and an envelope in the other. His eyes scanned the room until they found Michael. The air shifted, everyone turned, Michael's smirk faded. I didn't know who this man was. But Michael did. Mr. Right, the man said coolly, we need to have a word. Michael inhaled sharply. Not now. The man arched an eyebrow. Oh, I think now is perfect. And just like that, the entire balance in the room shifted. Michael, the puppet master just moments ago, suddenly looked trapped. I faced him directly. What is going on? He glanced from me to the stranger. I said not now. But the man wasn't listening, he pressed play on his phone. This time, the recording wasn't about Valerie. It was Michael speaking. Just keep her happy for now, his voice echoed. I need her family on my side. Once the deal goes through, I'll be done with her. Time froze. My stomach twisted. Michael's voice kept playing. Her father's the real prize, he's been looking to sell, and I need him to like me. Once the contracts are signed, I'll make up some excuse, cancel the wedding, but until then, she needs to believe I'm all in. A strangled sound escaped me. It had all been a lie. I turned to him, searching his face for something, regret, a denial, anything, but all I saw was raw panic. The man stopped the recording. Shall I continue? He asked calmly. Michael lunged, but the man sidestepped easily and passed the phone to someone in the crowd. They hit play. And now everyone could hear it. I don't even like her, Michael's voice went on. She's just naive, way too trusting, the perfect target. The silence that followed was deafening. Someone muttered, holy shit. Then everything imploded. Gasps, cries of disbelief, people looked between me, Michael, and each other in stunned horror. My father stood, his chair screeching back. Michael turned, his face white. Wait. But my dad didn't wait. One punch. Solid, direct, right to the jaw. Michael hit the ground. Screams rang out, a few people clapped, others just stared in disbelief. As for me? I stood motionless. My sister betrayed me, My mother, complicit. And Michael, the man I thought was my forever, had used me like a bargaining chip. I felt nothing, just emptiness. I turned toward Valerie, half expecting her to look smug. But she wasn't. She looked devastated, staring at Michael like he'd just ripped the ground from under her. She took a hesitant step forward. Michael, you. Shut up, he snapped. He wiped the blood from his mouth, still on the floor. You ruined everything. Valerie's jaw locked. And that's when I nearly laughed. She thought she was the mastermind, thought she was clever, chosen. But she was just another game piece, same as me. For the first time, I spoke clearly. You both used me, I said, my voice like ice, this whole time. Michael sat up slowly, cradling his jaw. I was going to tell you. I cut him off. No, you weren't. Valerie looked like she couldn't process it. But he picked me. Michael let out a cruel laugh, nothing like his usual charm. You were convenient. Her face crumpled. You love me, she whispered. Michael scoffed. You were the backup, that's all you ever were. And in that instant, I saw her clearly. Not just selfish. But pathetic. Her entire life had been one desperate attempt to outshine me, and now? She wasn't even the villain of the story. She was a footnote. My mother looked like she was struggling to breathe, my father's fists were still clenched. And me? I turned to the man in the suit. Who are you? I asked. He gave me the faintest smile. Let's just say, I work for someone who absolutely despises dishonesty. My father's phone buzzed, and as he checked it, I saw his expression shift. He glanced at Michael, a smile slowly forming on his face. Something was unfolding, something much bigger than we had imagined. I could feel it deep in my gut that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Michael was still sitting on the floor, his lip dripping blood, his face flushed with anger. My mother hadn't moved from her spot, standing stiffly as if she could still somehow wish this whole nightmare away. And Valerie? She was visibly shaking. But the man in the suit, the one who had revealed everything, wasn't finished. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to my father. This is what you've been waiting for, he said calmly. Dad took the envelope with trembling hands, tearing it open. His eyes scanned the contents, his face shifting from confusion to understanding, then finally to a furious rage. Is this a joke? He demanded, his voice tight. No joke, the man responded, just the truth. Dad turned to Michael, his fist clenched once more. You were planning to screw me over? The guests were paralyzed, witnessing the spectacle unfolding before them. I took a hesitant step forward, my mind racing. Dad, what's going on? He didn't respond directly. Instead, he held up the papers. Michael's complexion turned ashen. These, Dad said, his voice shaking, are documents transferring my business shares to Michael, without my consent. The room gasped in shock. Michael didn't even try to deny it, he simply stared at the floor. Valerie, still in her pristine white dress, turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. You were after money? Michael let out a bitter laugh. What, did you really think I wanted you? I watched her face crumble into devastation. This was it, the moment everything shattered into pieces. Valerie made a strangled noise, caught somewhere between a sob and a scream, and clutched at Michael's arm, desperate. But you love me, you chose me. Michael jerked his arm away. You were convenient, he's overweight. I needed to make sure your mom would back me if your dad ever got suspicious. You were naive enough to go along with it. Tears streamed down her face. You're a monster, she whispered. And Michael didn't even flinch at the accusation. As for my mother, she had the audacity to turn to me and say, see, this is why we wanted you to step aside. He's ambitious, he has a plan. I let out a harsh, sharp laugh. You're defending him? I asked incredulously. She raised her chin in defiance. Valerie just wasn't careful. If she had been smarter, none of this would be happening. Even Valerie turned to her, shock written all over her face. Mom, she gasped, are you seriously blaming me for this? Mom didn't hesitate for a second. You should have waited, you pushed too hard. And that was it. Something inside Valerie broke. She spun toward my mother, her shoulders trembling as her voice came out in a whisper. I did everything for you, she said. I destroyed my relationship with my sister for you, and now you're blaming me for everything falling apart? For the first time in my life, I saw real pain in Valerie's eyes. She turned to look at me, raw emotion in her voice. "I'm sorry," she said, and for the first time, I believed she meant it, but it was too little, too late. I said nothing, I just stared at her, my silence speaking volumes. She sobbed once before turning and running out of the venue. My mother moved to follow her, but Dad stopped her cold. "We're done," he said, his voice icy. Mom blinked, stunned. "What, you're choosing this? You and Valerie almost handed everything over to Michael," he spat. "I can't trust either of you anymore." Her mouth opened and closed, the words stuck. "But you're not welcome in my home," Dad declared, "not after all of this." And just like that, the woman who had spent her life manipulating others found herself with nothing. She turned to me, her last hope. I shook my head, and she finally understood. Without another word, she turned and walked out, following Valerie. The moment they were gone, the tension in the room evaporated. The guests began to whisper, some looking thrilled, others looking horrified. Michael stood up slowly, wiping his bloody lip. He turned toward me. "You believed in us," he sneered. "You wanted this." And for the first time, I felt nothing for him. I walked closer and stared him down. "You are the biggest mistake I've ever made," I said, my voice steady. He flinched ever so slightly. Then the man in the suit, the one who had started all of this, smiled slightly. "Oh, by the way," he said casually, "the police should be here soon. Those fake documents? That's fraud." Michael froze, disbelief washing over him. "What? You tried to steal from a man worth millions," the man said. "Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" Michael's eyes widened as panic set in. He looked around for an escape, but there was none. Outside, the flashing lights of police cars grew louder. It was over. The wedding was officially destroyed. Guests rushed out, some gossiping excitedly, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Dad stayed by my side, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I should have seen it sooner," he admitted. I exhaled shakily. "I should have too." He nodded in understanding. "But now we know, and that's what matters." The man in the suit approached once more. "Sorry about all the chaos," he said with a soft chuckle. I let out a breathless laugh. "Who are you?" He smiled cryptically. "Just someone who really doesn't like liars." And then he was gone. I didn't cry that night, though I had expected to. I thought I'd feel devastated. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I had lost a sister, I had lost a fiancé. But I had also lost every person who had been holding me back. When I finally went to bed, I slept better than I ever had. Because for the first time in my life, I was finally in control.